All right, we will call to order at 6:30 on March 6th, the planning commission. And we'll do a roll call. We have Commissioner Pereira on Zoom,
Present.
Commissioner Fitzgibbon,
Present.
Commissioner White,
Present.
Commissioner Matlock,
Present.
Commissioner Bober,
Overs.
okay, thank
Present.
you. Commissioner Mel, and Commissioner Seal. President, of course. We will look at we'll look for a motion for approval for the minutes from February 7th, 2024 meeting. So do we have any comments or motions for that?
Move to approve.
Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now we have an opportunity for public comment on non-agenda items. Each person that would like to comment has 3 minutes. Is anyone here, in person to comment on anything that is not on the agenda today? We don't have anybody for comment, so we will close the public hearing. So I opened it at 6:31 and I will close it also at 6:31. And now we'll move on to item number 4, which is the zoning docket request discussion with the 2024 comprehensive plan update. Staff, do you want to?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Teal. So we kind of advertised this one more as a listening session, and then discussion. So even though there's not a public hearing, we wanted to open this up to the public. I sent you any requests we received over writing via email, and then we've got people here in person to discuss. I figured we could start with their requests and their, let each person speak, and then we can have a discussion, pull up maps, and have that discussion. What we're looking for at the end of this is direction from the commission to staff on what you'd like to see in the initial draft housing element and land use element and zoning map. So we didn't want to assume anything as staff in preparing it, and we wanted to get your direction for us to bring that, what to prepare in the draft to bring it back to you. So my recommendation is to start with public, and then we can move on to discussion internally.
Do you want to do this as they have their moment to speak and then a discussion amongst us, or is it a back and forth?
That is completely up to the commission, since I wanted you guys to be able to ask them questions or do what you need, but you can also, when you're ready to just have an internal discussion, we could stop the public comment at that point and then have an internal discussion as well.
So you guys all have different projects that you want to talk about, or you're all here for the same project?
Yeah, from
For different stuff.
Okay, so
from what I received, we have Mr. Yee, and I apologize if I pronounced wrong, but the Glacier Project, North Bend Way, light density residential to, well, DC to light density residential. And the North Bend, or the.
Neighborhood business.
Yeah, that's it.
Mhm.
Are those the 4?
Those
Thank
are
you,
the
Noah.
4 comment letters that we've received so far, but obviously we've advertised to come and speak in person and not just in writing.
Okay.
So if anyone asks, we said you could do either, but, or both.
So, as the commission, are you guys okay if we just, ask each of those 4 to speak, and then we ask questions, and then we talk amongst ourselves?
Okay.
I mean, I don't know that all 4 are necessarily here, and then there's some overlap with the previous public input and dockets. So some of them are dockets, there's some overlap and there's some difference.
And so to note that some of the dockets, that actually the majority of the dockets that came through, you guys already directed us as part of the housing. So those are already kind of given us direction that we're working on. So this is kind of in addition to that direction, if there's any other changes to zoning. We're not using these changes to count or expecting to use them to count towards our deficit. But that doesn't mean we don't have a different vision than what's out there now.
So why don't we start with Mr. Yee, because I know, he's been excited to come to us for a while now, so let's start with you.
Yeah, no, I didn't, expect only to speak other than listen in. I think I presented pretty much the situation, my property and how it's not suitable for current zoning and my efforts to work with the city to try to rezone a more suitable use and You've got the mapping, the site plan, and all that information, so hopefully that's sort of self-explanatory as far as the issues and challenges I face, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions if anyone's got any questions of me, but at this time, we could do it down the road or individually, whatever works for you guys.
So just for clarification, right now, your property is Employment Park 1, is that
Yeah,
correct?
PT ones,
And what is it that you're wanting to?
to low density residential. It's gonna fucking build a commercial on the side of the hill.
It's true. Commissioners, do you have questions or comments?
So we, planning commission's seen something like this before, but you guys have not, right?
I've seen them.
You've seen that?
Yeah.
You've seen this,
Yeah.
yeah, there was a presented to us before, before you guys joined, so.
Back in for talking about, any questions for him or do we just want to?
My only concern is the slight encroachment on the flood plain. There's one of the buildings intersects slightly with it, and I don't know if that is an error in the map itself and how these things were placed, and I don't know if that's a variance. But it's such a minor detail, I don't know that it's something that should protect the project going forward.
Yeah, that's just a preliminary site plan.
Okay.
Now, given the developable land area and engineers and geologists were figured out, so we think.
I mean, it's,
Yeah, that footprint could
it's a
definitely.
matter of inches.
Yeah, it's just totally premature.
So the upper part of the property, where it say you just have plans for the road, is that future build out, is your hope?
Yeah, the upper, there's existing easement roadway up there.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna plan on expanding that, for access up at the top and then actually we're gonna we're proposing to create a new, access road up there so the resident that owns that lives in the back property can access his property through it. And we're gonna just move some things around so we can try to maximize whatever developable land I have there. And then, think about doing was on the lower portion, because there's such a limited amount of developable area in the bottom. Create some kind of higher density that might be suitable for the city as far as affordable housing or workforce housing, whatever. Then what we do is we would expand the road that's subject to county approval, that's further down on Way. And so that way we would mitigate some of the traffic going down the lower portion instead of using that one main road off at Northwest 8th, and Northwest 8th, and then we'd come through around on Way to the lower portion. Again, it's just kind of subject to further discussion as we move this thing forward. This is right now, I'm just trying to figure out a way to pay for all those ULIP tax assessments I'm gonna be hit with, and moving this thing forward.
And this piece of property, if you look at the zoning map is, oh, thank you. Yeah, perfect.
And the city's plan is to have all of them be a dead end there, right?
Yes, there is
Yes.
no way to reconstruct the bridge there.
Yeah, it seems like, I mean, it's just a really tricky piece of property. We do know what the zoning is, it's not in our city, but what the zoning is on the other side.
I don't know specifically, but it would be some sort of. Will be voted or 1 unit for 5 acres, yes.
Yeah.
Some of it is even, like state owned and. Each parcel, but.
Especially where it's bordering
Right.
rural land.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like.
Up north is residential, there's some residential north.
The city wants their.
Right. Do other commissioners have thoughts on this, or should we move forward? Are there concerns with this type of zone change?
The only concern that I have that's left is the intersection between Hallway, is this what it is here? Heading to North Bend Way, it's a pretty sharp angle for making like U-turns.
The railroad track, you know,
Yeah, so I don't.
it's wider than. When you're in person, it's pretty good wide space.
It's like the other side of Old Jack.
So the city does have, and I don't know the time frame, but they do have a roundabout in the. Let's see, right here. So this road, this is that bypass road that it doesn't exist yet, but the right of way is there adjacent to Nintendo. And the idea is it would kind of go this way and connect into a starfish roundabout, they call it. So do you guys have any other details from Public Works on? Okay.
Yeah, that would only really help the other properties in the line, right?
Yeah.
Because they're not connected homes.
But
But no, in person, that intersection is not too.
Yeah, and when we're looking at this, you know, while a site plan is provided, as we're looking at rezones, we can't say, oh, it's definitely going to be developed this way, you know, maybe, maybe not. It's really just zoning that we're really looking at.
The site has seen a lot of, you know, interest in the past. There was a development agreement at one point on this property. For multifamily
no, there was a development agreement in 2006 that the
for
the city council and their planning commission signed up on for 200 single family residential homes. Yeah, they can provide a copy of that. Yeah, it was signed and recorded with the city,
Mhm.
and then the they learned for 20.
And it expired,
Yeah, expired 2016.
right?
Yeah, there was the technical reports that I aimed to pay for it. So way to.
Yeah.
But I think it's important also to understand fully what the request is, because you've got a site plan that shows some multifamily. But then this is also describing low density residential.
Well, yeah, the site plan that was prepared several months ago was in light of address what the city was looking for, which is going to be half acre lots on the upper portion. And the lower portion, given the limited amount of 2 or 3 spots of developable property, how to make the project economics work, like maybe some type of townhome or workforce, or some sort of higher density. But having discussions with folks in planning, including yourselves and Becca and Jamie, maybe the path of least resistance would be to just try to get low density residential approved for the entire property, zoning change for that, and then separately, maybe if the city wanted to see some, we could work out some sort of higher density residential, whether it be apartments or workforce housing and whatnot, or portion and figure that out. But yeah, disregard the site plan that shows the multifamily, the higher density on the lower portion. That was just a proposal by the engineering firm to kind of like make the projects economics work, because you got to spend a lot of money putting in roads, sewers, gutters, all that stuff, and if you can only build 3 or 4 homes on 10 acres on the bottom, it just doesn't, that's a lot. So,
It's helpful to see the geography of it, so.
right, this is tricky, challenging is a better word, I think, adjective than tricky.
Okay, any other comments or questions on this one? Personally, for me, I don't have many reservations about a low density use here, especially given the. Again, it's not in our city, so we don't have any control over it, but it feels like it fits in this area and has a layout of the land, but I don't know. The other commissioners will agree, EP one to me doesn't really make sense in this area, low density.
Yeah, discussion past or some other folks was that they just painted a broad brush there, decided the PP one, that entire area was. Some properties or sites aren't particularly suitable for EP one, specific of mine, it's just topography and the floodplain hazard and all that stuff, it just This is not suitable for commercial. I mean, I love the building, 200,000 square foot industrial building, but this is, you can't, it's like we're on stilts. It's all way to make that work.
Well, I don't, so I.
Yeah. It's like, that's not economically viable, you know? So, anyway.
Well, thank you for your time and meeting with us again, and we look like we'll meet again with you.
Thank you for listening. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go on to the Glacier
Or
property.
do you want the adjacent piece first, which is right next
Yeah,
to
which
it?
is that?
Is there anybody here for the McGuire residence? No, so there was,
Just this, yeah. if you want to-
yeah, there's just written, letter, that was sent around, and it's for these two properties. Can't really zoom in right now. The house kind of is in the middle. There was a fire and it burnt down. And you can drive to the end of the road, and, I walked up it with our building inspector, but it is a steep, windy driveway, like. And so, you know, we've been in discussions with them about replacing it for their 86-year-old mother. There's nothing else you can really do there. It's on, septic and a well. The idea with development is that the road would be improved out to this point. But again, we have a project under review right now, Mount Si Industrial on this part of this property, but even this part, there's nothing currently proposed. It just is really high up, really good view from up there, but again, their request is, we'd just like to replace the home for our mom, and put a single family, in, and they're likely going to be able to do that anyways, under our non-conforming, regulations, and so that's what it is, and so that this is kind of more of a paper exercise of, this is what's already here, let's have the map reflected.
But if you're supporting the change, it's not kind of a hole anymore, so
Right.
if if you support E, then this one kind of makes sense too, as attached to it, so that's. Just wanted to bring that to your attention, so if you wanna go to the other one.
Yeah, are there questions on that one?
I'm assuming the houses would be the same footprint size.
Yeah, well, it would depend, I mean, obviously, if the zone changes, they have more flexibility to design something different. Under our non-conforming, if it stays EP, then they would just build it at the exact same size. Our non-conforming technically allows you to expand up to 20%, but if it wasn't non-conforming anymore, then they would have more opportunity to do something different there.
And I think this family doesn't wanna wait, because their mom is 86, they're really trying to get her in her home quickly, so they probably wouldn't wait till the end of the year to even wait for an answer, for certainty. But yeah.
Yes, they're allowed to just rebuild the house, this and change
So,
it.
yeah, so technically we're gonna bring a code amendment to you, where we've just sent it to the paper to be advertised. To adjust our non-conforming code to allow people to build it up to 2 years after, because people are having troubles finding contractors and dealing with insurance, so they've actually passed their 1 year time, so they're kind of in a spot that's stuck right now, but when talking to them and other people, we realized 1 year right now is not really enough time. So we'll be bringing that amendment at the next available time for a public hearing, taking that to council, that will let them move forward with the rebuild as is. But they've also requested the zone change, so.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed it's been Jason's first one response.
Yeah,
Wow.
And you're just asking for those two small ones.
that's all, yeah, that was all they wrote. That's useful.
Okay,
So just for the record too, is this like planning commission consensus? Do you recommend?
Well, we can talk at the very end after going through all of them and make sure we have a consensus on each piece.
okay, so let's see, we can do this one now.
Yeah.
And then you're here for, let's see, which one? Okay, perfect. You want to talk to us, see how it goes?
Yep, that's good.
Okay, hi, my name is Craig Glazier. I live at 12414 412th Avenue Southeast. You guys all got the packet that I put together. I apologize, I'm not a graphic artist. But I'm born and raised on this piece of property. I've seen the Mountain Valley Center get developed as well as the outlet malls, and just kind of seen everything happen around it as well as alongside you. And I don't know, it was probably 5, 6 years ago, just kind of looking around, looking across the river, at Shamrock Park. And I was like, you know, what'd be cool here is a pedestrian bridge, and I just thought about it, and, Brendan Elwood lives across the river from me, and I brought it up to him, he was like, well, that'd be cool, then I could just jump on the bridge and go over to the Mountain Valley Center, so. Kicking around some ideas and talking to people, I was like, you know, I said, well, eventually, it'd be cool if, you know, I don't have to mow 9 acres of grass anymore, I could, which I actually do. And, you know, turn it into apartments and have a pedestrian bridge. And I started looking at the trail system. And if you go from downtown to, William Henry Taylor Park. And then you go straight through Skyview, and then you go right to Shamrock Park. It's actually kitty corner to my 9 acres. And you can't do anything right up against the river anyway, so I proposed a new park there, and then the balance of the property be zoned, high density residential. To help with the housing needs that are, you guys are considering here in 2024. And from that pedestrian bridge, bring a trail all the way through to the Mountain Valley Center, so that all the people who, if you look further, I guess it would be down on the map, I guess it would be southeast. You have all that constrained low density, but that stops right before you get up to the 2 neighborhoods that are on either side of me. And it also would allow all the people over in New Sideview and Old Sideview to be able to go across that bridge, get to the Mountain Valley, and all the people on this side to go over and be downtown. It happens to be that my family's been here for 115 years, and we have a fair amount of properties downtown. And I've been redeveloping them over the last 8 years since I moved back in 2016. You know, Sunset Garage was 10 years ago, looked a lot different than it looks now. I've been continuing to work with the King County Landmarks Commission and the city to kind of get it from, you know, its mothballs and being a storage unit for 40 years into a, you know, a functioning building again. And then I tackled, in 2019, we took the old Glacier dry goods store and turned it into Volition Brewing. And we've done the, call it phase 1 of the beer garden out back, and just upgraded the brew house. So now we are actually in wholesale mode. And then we put the butcher shop in next door where the ski shop used to be, and the projects just are never ending. So I've got the antique mall, which I worked with the city to get Cascadia Pizza on that corner parcel. Because their intent and our goal with them is to get them to actually, once I get the antique mall empty, to renovate that building and turn that into Cascade Pizzeria and Burger Joint that actually have 2 brands that they want to combine in there. And then there's a couple other properties that you guys saw in the packet. As far as the rooftop deck for Volition in the annex building behind, the little teal house that's across from Pro Ski or the old city hall that we want to turn into, whether it's a whiskey bar, or a coffee shop, or something like that. And so in order to do all these projects, which we all want downtown revitalized, and I'm a key proponent of that, but I also need some liquidity. Like I can only go so fast, and so I proposed to have this formally, annexed and rezoned. In order to, and I'm not a developer, I'm not gonna develop those apartments, I'm gonna sell the land. But I wanna take that liquidity, I wanna turn it in, I wanna finish my buildings downtown. I want downtown to be done so I can, we already own a house on Park Street that I'm remodeling right now. That would be my primary residence, so I can walk downtown. And I just want to be done with downtown. And everybody can enjoy it, and I want a restaurant, I wanna be able to go to 10 different restaurants by walking downtown. And so, I presented this because I know a lot of city councilors, presented this to, several of them so far, and they've been like, fantastic, please go present it, please, go and talk to everybody. And so that's what I'm here to do, is answer questions, and, it's just a concept and idea, and we'll see where it goes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think the majority of residents here from the individuals I've talked to are very excited about the possibility of revitalization of downtown, so that's very welcome, and commissioners do have questions or comments.
Greg, I have a question about county conversations with the pedestrian bridge. You spoke with the county on how that impacts the business or the levy.
No. No, but I know, like in talking with Mark Regos, they added a pedestrian bridge across the South Fork to their transportation plan between probably in the, early 2030s is what he said. So Shamrock Park is both Shamrock Park and my property in the two neighborhoods, north and south, are in the urban area reserved. So I guess it's my assumption that you guys would bring them into the city, so you have jurisdiction over them before any kind of rezone.
So my question to the staff is,
I was gonna say it'd be kind of the opposite. First, you guys would choose what the zone is, we'd update the comprehensive plan. And then it would be up to either council or through petition and annexation process.
what is that, my question is, what does that annexation process look like?
Again, it depends on the council direction. Past practice has been through petition only, so it's up to the applicant to go through the process to get approval through council and through the agency that approves annexations. But obviously it's much easier when the underlying zoning is what he's requesting, and we wouldn't be able to, he requested an annexation in his process, we wouldn't have time to process an annexation before our deadline in December, so we would just be looking at not changing the city boundary, just changing the zone, and then addressing the annexation request after the comprehensive plan update. But if you guys choose to go forward with the underlying zoning, we would change the zoning map.
With annexation, you wouldn't annex just his lot?
No, you would have to annex at least the parcel to the north of him.
Which is Shamrock,
You couldn't
it's
leave.
called Shamrock Park, but it's 123rd, which is those,
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, you couldn't leave a hole, so you'd have to at least, the minimum annexation would be this piece right here.
And does that require approval of the homeowners there?
I believe there's a process that they can petition not to, and there's a percentage that can say they don't want to, but.
Is annexation, does this project hinge on annexation?
Rezone this.
Yes,
Right, no, but
yes, the
The project
project
itself
would,
would
you
have
would
to.
not likely be able to develop it at that kind of intensity in the county.
but that doesn't have to be this rezone.
Correct.
I keep it.
Wait, that's what we're for. It seems that, I do appreciate you mentioning that you won't be the developer. Because that means that somebody else will develop it. So the plans where it's the 14 units per acre may or may not be 14 units per acre. If I read the code right, they could have up to, what was it, 21? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not a specific unit count, but by the time that you factor in that open space requirements.
so I've talked with a couple developers and they've kind of mapped out what that 9 acres would look like, given the river, the floodplain, floodway, et cetera, and they expected to get about 120 units based on that, so that's why I assumed that. But yeah, I don't want to do ground up development, I want to finish downtown.
Which, and I do actually really like, if we're doing more multifamily here, I like that there's a park next to the river because that helps tie the two streets together so that, they're probably used to cutting across your property, just because that's
Yep.
often how that works, even whether or not they should or shouldn't. So it's nice that there's a park there, I think that's generous and it's next to the rivers.
Well, it makes sense, and I also, I always thought that it would be, when I was growing up, we would always go up to exit 32, jump in the river and float down and get out at our place. But sometimes we would go to not stop at my place, because of how the river turns, there's a little, there's a kind of a sandy beach area. and float all the way down to essentially North Bend Way Bridge and get out, and then you're downtown. So as far as like, if you wanna create like a downtown float, if you will, and I know you guys have, you know. You guys have been looking what to do with Riverfront Park for a while and creating, and then you've got the levee on the other side. Well, if there was a park, like a starting point, where you could create, hey, you just drop in here and you got about a 40-minute float until you get out and then you're downtown. Well, that's just gonna help downtown businesses too. And if you have, you know, I'm not sure the timing of the levy and everything you guys are gonna do on the Nintendo side, but. I mean, you have the opportunity to activate and make, I lived in Bend, Oregon for 9 years, and, you know, we did nothing but float the river along the old mill district and get out and go to restaurants and bars, and I mean, it was fantastic. You know, there's 4 or 5 months out of the year here, probably 4 months, that you could do the same.
Well, I mean, you're saying all the right things, I mean. I mean, I love having it, so I'd love to have it closer. But ultimately, we do have to look at the land use and how it would affect whether or not this project goes forward or
Yeah.
not, how it affects the rest of the property around it. Right across the street is currently the interchange mixed use zone, so it feels like it could fit well within that. And then across from the street from that is of course commercial, so it feels, to me, it feels like this could be viable, but I don't know how the other commissioners feel.
Creates a nice viable walkway path from the downtown area across to the Safeway Center without going along Vanderbilt Boulevard, which doesn't have sidewalks. It certainly is much less traffic intensive kind of walk, so it's a good deal.
Why request annexation as opposed to, sell the property prior?
Say again?
Why the request for annexation as opposed to selling the property on private market?
In order to create the value, in order to create the liquidity to do all the downtown buildings, I'll need higher density.
Okay,
So, I mean, in order to create the value, to create the money to put into the downtown buildings. And I put in my proposal, I think it's gonna be $4 million to get all of downtown buildings that I own done. And I won't hesitate for a second to do it.
thanks.
Yep.
That's what I was-
Does, maybe I'm missing this, with the zoning change to HDR, does that require annexation at all then?
No.
So, yeah, so it's not really, an annexation doesn't have to happen.
To change the zone, to develop it will.
Still in that way, but it still do require annexation?
Correct, because you still, if it's outside the city, we still don't have control over processing the permits and the development until it's annexed. So we create an underlying zoning that basically on county land, that what we're trying to tell the people. Or what we're trying to predict for ourselves is if it gets annexed, this is the zone we expect it to be. But there is an underlying county zoning that if they were to develop before annexing, that they'd have to abide by it, wouldn't matter what zone we put on it.
And any developer, if you guys rezoned it but didn't annex it, any developer isn't gonna close until it's annexed. So it won't create the liquidity for me to do.
Okay. Yeah, that's, I guess. My question is a bit of a cart before the horse situation here with annexation. So.
Yeah,
I don't know that what you said about the zoning need to be changed first, but. If county said, okay, do an HDR zone change, then you could develop it as HDR. And with the no annexation part on our part.
I don't know the answer to that
Yeah.
question. I just know I would much rather work with the city.
100%, I think that. I think I really like the project, what I don't like, from a zoning point of view is having one HDR lot. With both LDRs on both sides. And then also having this annexation part to come after. So we make this change, take to HDR, allow this to happen. You create that one sliver of HDR and then annexation gets shot down. You're left with having to go back and change it again.
You wouldn't have to
You
change.
wouldn't have to change it again.
What's be weird to have one lot as HDR, that's my point. that can't be HDR. Because it's not annexed.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we have to have some zoning on any parcel in our urban growth boundary, we don't not
But
without.
LDR makes more sense, since LDR around already.
See, I like having the HDR in the middle of the low density. I don't like having just like high density, just complexes upon complexes. I like having them just kind of being more blended. I like having a neighborhood, single family home that leads to an apartment complex, that leads to a park. I think it's great.
Not that it's critical, but we planted so many trees on the perimeter when I was a kid, and they're all 60, 70, 80 foot trees. I don't even see my neighbors on either side.
Yeah.
Like, we could build apartments and they're gonna be like, what's going on over there?
No, I agree, actually, I do like the mix too as well. Zoning wise, it's a little weird to do it that way, because you. Again, if annexation doesn't happen, if the HDR doesn't build out, you're stuck with this one lot of HDR. That eventually, 10 years from now, if nothing happens, we're all having this conversation about, well, do we change that back to LDR? Because there's no point in having it as HDR.
One thing to consider there though is the size of the properties, by
Right.
acres.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think HDR is a great idea here, I guess I would. Lean more towards, do we have a conversation about all of it being HDR versus one? That makes more sense to me, from a planning point of view. To say, let's push all these to HDR. I'd rather annex the whole all the way to the freeway, honestly,
I think it all HDR.
something, you know, but again, that's.
And that can be the direction, if you guys are interested in, I mean, this is the vision, so if you are interested in putting more of these as HDR too. That was one of the things we kind of discussed as a possibility to meet our housing needs. That's still an option and direction you can give the staff to prepare for the.
Yeah, it
So
did
the
make
update.
sense to me as well, the whole.
I mean, at a certain point, as you get lower, you start to get into more too much.
Well, as soon as you
Shoreline.
get past the neighborhood that's just to the south of
This one?
9 acres. Is where you have it labeled as constrained low density.
Yeah.
And so you actually have some 9 acres and then there's about 1.3 acres, that big chunk, right below it on the left-hand side, you'll see that. So, and then you have 4 homes that are adjacent to me, but, so you have the north, call it the north neighborhood, which is called, they call it Shamrock Park, even though the real Shamrock Park is across the river. And, those, you know, if you were to zone, you could zone that as HDR as well as 9 acres and still leave that, that little strip, which is called Berry Estates, 125th, as the low density residential, so it's a step down from HDR to the low density, then to the constrained low density.
Yeah,
The reason that those properties, especially to the south, were constrained residential, is those. On Craig's property, there's just a sliver of floodway, but as you move south, that floodway expands quite a bit into those properties, so.
As we get further, that's what I was gonna say, as you get further down. You know, it's not as developable at all.
It gets really swampy as you get further south.
interesting.
Yeah, as I say, you might have a little corner in this one, but that's about it.
And where there's mixed use across the street, it feels appropriate.
I love walking 600 feet, going to a little side restaurant.
Other thoughts or comments, questions from commissioners? Okay. So I guess we'll move on, we'll take the tally at the end.
Yep.
All right, now we are going to. Oh, this is the one, the commercial to the low density, right? Our next one.
Yeah.
Those parcels.
Or the.
Or, yes, thank you. Thanks, Ursa.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parcels between, in the vicinity of, Torreston Park and then Cedar Falls Way and North Midway.
So, Okay, oh, you're here for it,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and again, these are already, you guys already gave us direction to change those to downtown commercial, so that's what we've been working with.
Great.
So.
That's a beautiful thing, and I don't have much to say. Hi, I'm Craig Goldsmith, and I'm here to represent the personal interest of my wife, Susan Torgerson, who's a city council person, and she's my wife, she's my better half. And I'm super excited about it, Craig, what you had to say tonight. We're very committed. You know, Susan's family's been here for a long time. And her dad's vision was to make this commercial, and it never really got any traction, but there's a different vibe today and a different, I think, a complete different view in the community related to the openness and the desire to make our community one that fits the residents' desire to, you know, have more restaurants, more retail, entertainment, higher levels of service, and the excitement that I have and she has to try to be a support to that. And so for our property obviously is right next to it. It may be not obvious, but to many of you, you know that our property is located right next to Torgerson Park. So you pull into that driveway that goes down to Torgerson, and we have four lots there. And we're literally, when we look across the street to our commercial neighbor, you know, the excavation contractor, he's commercial, and it's like commercial all the way back down. And so for us, we would like to see that whole kind of area, that small area. Where are we, right?
It's all marked in red, right?
Is it all marked in red? Okay. Okay, good. And we're here and here. What we'd like to do is see all of this and all this as commercial, you know, DC commercial, and extend it out so that it connects. It's apparently there's a history here, and I don't know how far, but like years and years ago, this was all commercial. And somehow it got converted back into residential, maybe 70 years ago. I don't know. Does that sound right? That's what, that 60, 50. I mean, we're talking many, many years ago. And that was before a lot of this kind of developed, right? And maybe there was a thought at that time to have more, the need for more residential. I think at this point, you know, our feeling is that our desire is to be able to kind of connect our properties, and, you know, with the idea, we don't know, we have no development vision ourselves. I'm in commercial real estate. I've been in it for like 35, 40 years in a management capacity, and worked with developers, not worked for developers, but more on the management side. And so we don't have a specific vision for the property ourselves, but we are very flexible and open, and our desire is whatever happens to the property, our desire would be for it to be something that makes sense from you know, bringing more services to our North Bend, you know, friends and neighbors. And, you know, this is our community. We love this community. That's why Susan has gotten really involved. We've gotten involved as a couple, and we see ourselves, you know, being here till we probably die, you know, kind of deal. We love North Bend. And so we're really committed to seeing that through. And we just feel like the ability to have it as being commercial gives us the best opportunity to make a contribution to the community. And obviously, you know, there's an economic benefit to us. I'm not being inauthentic about that. So it kind of just ties in with what you guys have already said. So I don't need to take up any more of your time, but thank you for your consideration, and super excited about what's all being proposed. We've got a great future here in this community. I'm super excited for us as a community. So I just want you guys to say thank you for your service to our community. That's it.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this to us, and, you know, it's always a good thing when we can be on the same page, you know, as mentioned, we had kind of talked about going this direction anyway, so the fact that you're on board with it, that's fantastic. I mean, nobody ever wants to force anybody to do something different with their property than what they
Right.
wanted, so we really appreciate you coming in. Are there questions, comments from commissioners?
Yeah, piggybacking on what she said, if the other property owners don't like this, what does that look like for them?
Yeah, I'm telling you, I don't know what they're gonna say, to be honest with you.
So with DC, it does allow for, I mean, as it's written right now, likely the zoning would be what's considered not the core DC. So it would allow for either commercial or multifamily residential. So there's that zone being that downtown commercial has some flexibility, it doesn't allow single family under the current process, but obviously any non-conforming can stay for as long, but if someone wanted to develop it residential or commercial, that there's that flexibility, so multifamily or commercial would be allowed or both.
I don't know if anybody else in the audience is from any of these properties, they could chime in, but we have heard from a number of
Yeah,
them,
you can
you know,
see
the
all
ones
the
that
requests
submitted
we've
requests, but
gotten.
others as well that may not be on here that talk to us and.
Greg?
Can I speak?
Yeah.
I think what the city of North Bend has done over the last, 7, 8 years, even 10 years. With that roundabout and how they've kind of, taken and started growing towards, I call it Truck Town still, but. It's been fantastic, the changes that have come since you guys put in the roundabouts and the sidewalks and everything, I mean. Downtown feels completely different than it did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
In so many ways, and it makes complete sense for that downtown commercial zone to finish till it gets to the ranger station. And that's what those 4 properties that, that Susan and you own, that it just makes sense to me, and then it gives you the opportunity to do some resident, higher density residential or. Some other services for people that, are going to the park behind there, so I think it's great.
Any comments? Okay. Well, thank you so much for.
Oh, thank you.
And for staff, would you like us to make any motions or just
Like, we've got some other people here, so if there's even written requests that they want to speak.
Sure, were you here for a specific what request?
We were just here to listen, so.
Okay.
I'm here for item 5. Perfect, thank you.
What about you? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Duncan Sailors, I represent the Sailors family, we live in the property that's well, we have the shop that's formerly known as the sweeper shop.
Right here on the end.
Our family has been there for 34 years. We're requesting changing of zoning, more to be in conducive with what our property actually is, which is a little bit more commercial, but we don't have any plans to change what we're doing or build anything new. We just want to have something that's a little bit more in line with what our property does. And it's income for our family, the shop is income. Yeah, we're just open to any kind of change.
Yeah, thank you for speaking up, I apologize, we were in a blind spot, so.
No problem.
But thank you. And that's wonderful that, you're open to possibilities, and I don't think anytime we change a zone, nobody's saying, okay, now get out, that's never how that works, and so. Thank you for your openness.
Sure.
Any comments for him?
I love that big Christmas tree you got down there.
Yeah.
That's our new renter, Reflection of Perfection. Yeah.
Love it.
So one thing I think is important to clarify is this is preliminary direction, because any of these changes that have to go to a public hearing. So we'll prepare an updated draft zoning map based on this initial direction from the planning commission. But then that's when it goes out to the broad public to say, these are proposed changes. And that's essentially when it's the fan.
That's the different one.
Well, out of any of the ones that we've seen, are there concerns from any of the commissioners? I mean, it seems like we've been pretty positive about all of them, but are there any concerns?
No, I mean, Craig, I'm Brendan Elwood Sneaker, so I'm in the Blue House, right?
Oh, okay.
So officially, I have a lot of questions for you, but, coming from an unbiased position in this role, I think it's a great idea. Across the board and all the plans, I have been looking at this one, so.
So are you directly across from me?
Yeah, so I'm the Blue House.
Okay,
Probably
alright.
around Sparkman, and I see my.
So you-
Yeah, he's a big tractor, right? So.
Oh, my kids are, well, I got one left, but two are in college, they used to be my mowers. Now, yeah, maybe someone's up to me.
I have no red flag. I like them as written. I know we connected around rezoning more than just the glacier property. And I'm just kind of having this conversation again in 3 to 5 years, see who has new ideas. I don't think we have to rezone everything right now, but as for the actual lot. And Commissioner Pereira, no, I think you're still there.
Yeah.
We
Are
haven't
you
heard
awake?
anything. I know we haven't heard anything from you, so. Did you?
Oh, he's got baby.
Yeah.
Stop sharing for now.
Sorry, I could not hear you. Can you repeat, please?
I think we're just asking if you had any comments or concerns.
No, not now.
Okay, thank you. But we didn't want you to think you were forgotten, so, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Do we have to do an individual motion for all 4, or can we make one?
The no motion is necessary, it's just staff direction, so it's not an official
That's great.
vote. So as long as I've got consensus, then we know our marching orders to start drafting. For what we would, again, publish as a draft and send out for a future public hearing. Great.
Thank you all for coming for
I think it was discussed.
item number 4. Great, thank you.
There is, so the one other comment you did receive, it wasn't a rezone request, it was more a neighborhood business and changing the uses. That is the discussion we will need to have as we move forward, but not as critical since that's a development code change. We will have to just talk about the allowable uses you want to see in each zone with this update and those kind of changes, but that's probably, we'll bring that back for a separate conversation.
Would you like us to discuss that now?
No, I'm just saying, I just wanted to address that you had one comment letter, but
Thank you.
not really a rezone letter, yeah.
So thank you for reminding us on that one. And even that one, not that we need to discuss it, but it seems like a good idea to get into the nitty gritty about what that can look like.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will move on to item number 5, emergency housing discussion. The 2024 comprehensive plan update. You wanna?
Yes.
on that?
So let me share my screen. Everyone else can see who's on Zoom, but not you guys. Try to use 2 screens. There we go. So, for those of you that were here on planning commission, we did have to change our emergency, how we added indoor emergency housing and indoor emergency shelter based on a legislation change that happened. I think about 2 or 3 years ago. We've gotten more direction since then on the regulations. I don't think the legislation has technically changed, but they put out rules relating to that legislation that we didn't have when we first wrote the code. One of those regulations and direction is that for our comprehensive plan, we need to establish that we have enough locations for emergency housing. That are assigned to us under the new designations. That's an expensive process, we would go through similar what we had to do to figure out if we had enough density in each one. Based on the codes that were adopted, they required a conditional use permit, there were distancing requirements and things like that. Likely, if we went through that expensive process, we'd find out we'd have to change our code anyways. One of the ways to avoid going through that process of analysis to determine if we have enough sites that would allow construction is to allow emergency housing, both types, in any zone where we allow a hotel. So I wanted to have the discussion of, do we wanna continue to permit a permitted use for hotels in all the zones we have it in now? And are you guys okay with us also bringing then allowing permitted use for the emergency shelters in those same zones? We can allow them as conditional use permits in additional zones, so for instance, right now, even in HDR, we allow emergency shelters as a conditional use permit, we can continue to do that, that won't affect the code because we don't permit a hotel in that zone. But anywhere we permit a hotel, we would also then need to permit an emergency shelter. So for example, EP1 currently permits a hotel, we could either decide to not permit a hotel in that zone by right, and then we wouldn't have to permit indoor shelters or emergency shelters, whether indoor or housing or shelters. So I kind of want to just have a discussion to see the uses, because this is one thing that we have to show in our housing element that we're meeting these emergency housing requirements.
Can you
So
please
Brian-
share the screen? I'm not seeing what you are sharing. It's all black here for me.
Stop sharing and try again.
Sure. Yep, now I.
Okay.
Yeah, it's working. Thank you.
Thank you. So some of the things, my initial ideas was to both reduce the air, we don't expect with a city of our size to be able, now it's showing six zones that allow hotels. I don't see us getting 6 hotels in a city of our size. So reducing the zones that they can be in is one way to do it. So talking about which zones we wanna permit hotels in is kind of the first discussion. And discussing whether the emergency shelters would then be required to be permitted in those zones as well. My initial thought was to allow hotels in our DC, our IC, and then possibly either neighborhood business 2, because that'd be closer to what it is, but it could be neighborhood business 1. Or I'm sorry, EP1. So I just thought we'd have that discussion, see which direction you guys wanted to go. That is the easiest way. Again, if we do an analysis of our existing code, likely we'd have to change the code anyways. So I think our best bet is to discuss where we want hotels and in exchange where we would also allow these emergency housing.
Our target is like 300 and something.
The target doesn't matter if we allow emergency housing everywhere we allow a hotel.
Okay.
So you have listed a permitted use for hotels in EP1, so does that mean that the emergency shelters would also be in
If
EP1?
we continue to allow hotels in EP1, correct?
Okay,
But you could choose to not allow it in the EP1 if you wanted to. And don't forget, we also, I know in the past, this commission we've got a few areas. We've got a master plan process that could allow additional uses. We also have the development agreement process that could change, so we have a very specific process, we could look at that. But it would just be what's the underlying permitted use.
will you remind me what IC is? I'm sorry, I cannot think.
Interchange commercial, it is the purple.
Other questions specifically for staff, and then I'll see if you want to say anything on it or you just.
Just interested, yeah, I mean, I have questions, but I hear everything first.
Okay, I'll get back with you about questions.
My question on, so the hotel in the shopping mall, so
Mhm.
that's IC. Then we have the two motels, Sunset and on the other name, North Bend, that's in downtown commercial. I mean, so those are the, oh, and then we have something closer to Trenton.
That's an
I see, okay, so we have hotels in IC and DC.
I mean, I think DC might fall under the motel classification, but
Okay,
yes.
okay. Just wanted to clarify what is existing that we currently have.
Yeah.
So,
So DC and IC would be the two definitely to keep if that's.
yeah,
Is there a minimum that we have to keep? Minimum?
You guys could just leave them all like this and permit emergency housing in all the same zones.
No,
That's
thinking about the actual locations on the map, those seem to be places that are not near other uses.
That's,
Interchange Hotel. No big development, one of these town already has existing hotels. It seems a reasonable addition to the zoning to allow it.
for which one, I'm sorry,
For the,
the IC, yes,
yes, thank you.
agreed.
Yeah, I agree. I think. And the,
I do.
do we love neighborhood dinner? I'm not sure about that one. Probably my least favorite.
Repeat the question.
So currently neighborhood business 2. Yeah, so is the lighter blue. And the neighborhood business is the darker.
That light blue is, yeah, I mean, I just.
The
Yeah,
neighborhood business too feels like it makes more sense than the business.
That's how I drew it out as a possible
yeah.
So
idea.
I need to ask a clarifying question, because I'm new to the process. What is the definition for emergency housing versus housing for groups of people who need help overall?
So that's that's more of a group home, I mean, it depends on the. A group home is usually a residential, but then we have residential care facilities, which are also defined. These are both considered emergency shelters, so they're more not for long-term care, they're for long-term housing. It's only for an emergency, very short term.
Thank you.
Like medical or?
I think more just there's an emergency, someone,
A need, immediate need,
it doesn't have to be medical. I can try and let me see if I can.
but they
look our
could be
definition.
permanent buildings.
Like Mama's Hands or.
Mhm.
Is it kind of like the Grange, like what we do now in the winter time where we allow event emergency?
Right, yeah,
So
that can be.
we're seeing a lot of these developed throughout King County as version of old.
Yeah, it makes more sense.
I've heard of those, yeah, and basically they have people that come in that are needing to get off the streets.
Transitional technology.
Transitional housing.
That's, yeah,
Which has its own.
very, that's.
Okay.
Too many terms.
I'm gonna pull up the definition right now for those.
Yeah, and so reasons it's not,
So an indoor emergency housing is temporary indoor accommodations for individuals or families who are homeless or in an imminent risk of becoming homeless. That is intended to address the basic health, food, clothing, and personal hygiene needs of individuals or families. Emergency housing may or may not require occupants to enter into a lease or an occupancy agreement. An indoor emergency shelter means a facility that provides a temporary shelter for individuals or families who are currently homeless. Emergency shelters may not require occupants to enter into a lease or an occupancy agreement. Emergency shelters may include day and warming centers that do not provide overnight accommodation. So generally, emergency housing includes overnight accommodations. Shelters may not include overnight accommodations.
And this is just speculation, but I would presume that developers of these uses are seeking proximity to services.
Yes.
So proximity to transit in particular. And then easy access to grocery, medical, those types.
it seems like the ND2 could make sense, but I don't know that I love the NB location.
So again, you can remove a hotel from the NB zone and leave it as a conditional use permit for the indoor shelter. But we would just remove allowing a hotel in the NB zone.
Or, or you could remove the CUPs from the.
You could too, yes.
If you don't wanna see it there.
I like DC, IC, and NP2 or NP2. I think conditional use permits for NP1 makes sense with the one exception of this little corner that's close to downtown. So it's this little operation.
Yeah.
Existing.
Yeah, the mobile park. I think that's where I think that makes sense, but the rest of the areas, I agree. I think it's too far from the downtown area. I mean, it's not crazy far. People can walk, people can ride bikes, people can. Sure, there's a bus line that's running, but it just doesn't really make a lot of sense to be that far removed.
What location talking about, what you said?
Next to the wastewater treatment plant.
Pardon, I'm sorry.
That's NB zone.
Yeah, but I also, I get caught up because there's this, the Trucktown area where it's currently DC.
There's
IC,
yeah.
It also, it's random that that's down there, and so, like, maybe if we have some zoning or allowable zoning for hotels, maybe more business come into that area, different changes could come and provide more services in that part of town, so. That's just my thought on the NB1 specifically.
And so IMU is still a question, whether you guys wanna allow hotel in IMU and in association allow. Emergency housing.
I know.
It's the darker blue or right next to IC.
Oh, it's in on the digital, I see.
So one thing to bear in mind is there was a hotel proposal in the IMU zone.
That's a big.
That's a vacant lot that could still be a hotel.
Yeah.
So this could dramatically change opportunity on that side.
Right. And it feels like off of the exits that kind of feels like the best locations and the zones close to that.
Yes, for what we have right now, it's the best option for services and transportation.
Right.
It doesn't, it's walkable to downtown. But you've got the Safeway complex across the street.
Yeah, I mean, off exit 31, obviously that's the best option for services and transit.
So yes, that it's unlikely that some of these would be built as a ground up. On the ground up.
Yeah,
use.
it's likely, right.
But with that said, if any new hotels that go in, they have to allow for emergency.
No, the
services.
hotel doesn't have to allow for it, but the hotel could get bought out
Got
and
it.
become a shelter. That's what we're seeing most happening is that older hotels or motels are getting purchased and being used as a shelter instead of a hotel.
Okay, so any new development is excluded from this.
No, it could.
I mean,
It's just
sort of.
financially, it's not gonna happen for
Yeah.
40 years.
Yeah.
but-
Yeah, most hotels are gonna make more money as a hotel than
Yeah.
using it as a shelter. So if they're building a new hotel, they're not gonna use it as a shelter.
300 a night.
Yeah.
Part of the Hilton Club.
So right now, what I've kind of generally heard is DC, IC, IMU, and NB2. So the only other one I want to ask about, which isn't currently even an allowed use, is the EP2, because that's right around Trucktown to you and your freeway.
Is that the gray?
That's the darker gray, correct. So currently, we don't permit hotels there, but I just wanted to bring that up and ask the question whether that made sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And for EP2, I mean. Can commercial go in there as well?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, because I think that like sensible thing is to have like a grocery store in here and sure other things out here for zoning for a hotel, but yeah, I mean, it's just that one little part, there's nowhere else on the map in that lower right part, yeah, okay.
Do we know, is I'm not sure what branch of military, isn't the military having
The National Guard.
Yeah.
So they still technically have a purchase agreement. But we've heard funding, so the site priority has moved down. And so we don't know. We're waiting to hear that as that purchasing agreement gets towards the end, if they're gonna renew it or whether it's going to continue. or not. We don't have full information.
So no applications have been submitted.
No applications have been
I don't know
submitted.
if they need to submit.
They do, but they haven't.
Okay.
But we haven't received any application otherwise either. So.
Do commissioners feel about? Thank you. So we're good on approval. You agree on approval?
Yes. It sounds like it.
The red. I'm talking
Correct.
now.
Yeah.
The like. What?
The dark blue.
Bright teal, yes, the bright blue.
Yeah, and then the light or the
The
lighter
baby
blue.
blue.
Yeah.
Both the baby blue, is it like. Both of them, or can we do a conditional?
So this blue and this blue, but not this blue, which you guys are looking at rezoning this whole thing the darker blue here.
Yeah, she's in talking about 8th Street, south of 8th Street.
Yes, this one.
Yes,
Yeah,
that goes
that's
with
all
that,
the same zone.
yeah.
I guess.
I mean, unless you wanted to rezone that one neighborhood business one, then that would be.
But that's, back to the reality, it's not likely to develop.
Correct.
Yeah. As a,
I think your last day, we had to see a hotel up there anyways too.
Agree.
That's me too.
yeah,
So the only one that we're in question with is EP2 now. Or sorry, EP1.
EP1 currently allows it.
so EP1 currently allows it, but I think we're talking about not allowing it, and the only EP1 that'll be remaining.
Yeah.
Will really be what's on the west side, and I don't know that a hotel would make sense out there.
Yeah.
So then it's just the east side EP2, that's the question of, do we want to now allow, like, move the hotel allowance from EP1 to EP2?
Right. Which being off the freeway right there could make sense.
That's why I'm asking, yeah.
Yeah,
I think allowing for hotel to be built will draw a bigger appeal to possible uses of that land, so I'm in favor of that.
We have general consensus?
yeah. Yep, and then do you have questions? Council Fellows. Were there any other questions? Right, is there anything else from staff on this?
Not on this one, although I forgot to mention on the previous zoning discussion, we are looking, that came out of the council retreat. Looking at doing some more master plan overlay areas, so you'll be seeing that likely. For just like the west side, for that east side EP area, we wanna make sure that people are master planning it before they develop it, for new developments. So we'll probably be bringing back some sort of master plan designation on that site, back to you, but it'll still be up to you to recommend if you wanna move forward with it or not.
That reminded me, just out of curiosity, how many respondents have you gotten for that one message plan?
37, I'd say almost 40.
Yep. Yeah, so we're just, kind of got some initial results back today. We received a flow chart from our consultant on permitting and stuff, so we'll likely post that to the website.
We chastised, Councilmember, not being aware that that was out.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. There's
Yeah,
nothing else.
did you wouldn't have been in the city down there, I don't know, like, did we send it to? We only did it inside city first, okay.
It's been posted, yeah.
Yeah, we posted it through social media.
Yeah.
So good comments, yeah. We'll start coming in.
Alright, well, I think we've completed our agenda, so we will adjourn at 7:44. Leave our name, just like.
Leave your name tag.